Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How are you doing, sir?
Excellent, excellent. Happy to be here.
Yes, I'm so glad that you agreed to do this with me. May I please ask you to tell us your name and share a little bit about you that you feel comfortable sharing so we can get to know you?
Sure. My name is Vincent Brown. I'm straight out of the Bull City. As a matter of fact, born right in Lincoln Hospital. So that really, I kind of feel special for that.
Mhm.
Being here in a black city, growing up, everything that almost touched me were black people. So that really gave me a good pride and joy about myself. So that's probably one of the things that helped me give a good self-esteem for myself. Yeah.
Okay. And so you went to Jordan.
Jordan High School. Started out at Pearson Town. Went to Lowe's Grove and ended up at Jordan High School. And those were almost like three different entities going to school.
And you have two brothers, one older, one younger?
Yep, I'm the baby of three. I have one brother who's 6 years older than I am, and our older brother who's 10 years older than I am.
Absolutely. And have you lived in Durham your whole life?
To high school, then once I left high school, went to college at Hampton University in Virginia. Didn't come home much, and after that, I moved to the Washington, D.C. area and lived there for about 20 years. I moved back here in 2007 to get back closer to my parents and my family.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. How did you choose Hampton as your place for your college degree?
I knew I wanted to go to a HBCU, like Pearson Town, my elementary school. It might have been like about 60, maybe 70% black. Then my middle school was probably about 40% black. Then my high school was probably about 25 or 20% black. So at that point, I just was really ready to be around black people, learn about black people. As a matter of fact, my middle brother, one day he said, "Hey, Vince, you want to go visit Hampton University? We'll take you there next year to the Central Game." And he took me there, and I was completely blown away. I mean, I fell in love with the university, the location of it. I fell in love with the people that were there, and I said, "This is the place where I want to go." And I thank God to this day that I made that decision.
Absolutely. And so you also are a business owner, and you were at one time in charge of some portion of Central Sports. Can you talk about that a little bit? Talk about Central Sports and then your business.
Okay, sure. I used to be associate athletic director. I was over the finance. Practically, I was almost like the number two person in the athletic department. At that time, I was overseeing a $13 million budget, which I used to tell my staff, "Hey guys, when y'all ride home this evening, look how many business you're going to go past. They're not dealing with $13 million. So I would consider that some good sized business. It was a tremendous learning experience about the business of collegiate athletics, and really thoroughly enjoyed it, which kind of gave me the vision. I'm a teacher at heart. At one point, I used to live in the Washington, D.C. area. I was in banking, and I wanted to get out of that, and started my process of becoming a teacher. Once you start working around kids, you fall in love with it. And I was working at Central, realizing a lot of these kids were coming there ill-prepared for their future. And my wife and I kind of decided almost by accident, when we first started dating, I would go by to visit her, and she would always have these kids in her house. I'm like, "Hey guys, it's time for y'all to go." And so I'm like, "Hey, we can turn this into a business." And she maybe at that time didn't see it. She just wanted to be a teacher. And I said, "Well, you just focus on teaching, and I'll handle the business." And it's been on a tremendous journey. The name of our company is called APlus Test Prep. And what we do, we help students be successful on standardized tests. And I guess one of the amazing journeys through this, I've even had to change my mindset through this. Because I was a person going into this, I was one of these many, many people out here who were saying that standardized tests are biased against black people. And if you come to our office and you see our wall of success, it's hundreds of black kids from all different types of backgrounds. And so I just know through the proof is in the production that that's a fallacy. And what people need to say is that standardized tests are biased against students who don't read. And so that's been one of the eye openers, learning that process and really understanding how standardized tests operate.
Mhm.
And as I tell my brother, who's a third grade teacher, our classes, we're talking about the exact same things he's talking about in his classes, except for the math is a little bit higher level.
Mhm.
Everything else is the exact same thing.
Mhm.
And so when we first got started, we just want to have an opportunity for students to get into college. We had start realizing how these test scores can open up doors for them to go to college and how that impacted parents when their child would go to school for free. And that right there is very addicting.
Mhm.
Seeing parents when their kid do a tremendous job, and parents are in tears because they don't have their financial burden for college has now been lifted, and
Mhm.
that's a lot of pressure off of everyone in the home. So we thoroughly enjoy it from helping students with the ACT or the SAT or ASVAB. Or one of the things that's really grown with us is working with adult learners, with students who are trying to go to maybe law school or medical school or graduate school, or even teachers trying to pass their certification. So it's a tremendously rewarding job.
So have you added the MCAT and the LSAT to your offerings? Do you have that as a product too, where people can go and sign up for uh, tutoring, for lack of a better word, with those things? Because we just had a call with LSAC, which is the organization which administers law school students. And the places where they have normally gone for prep, of course, Kaplan and all
Mhm.
Princeton and all those folks. But they were actually looking for people to do more remedial work before they take the LSAT. Because, when you put that on your resume that you took the LSAT 3 or 4 times before you passed, that doesn't look good for you. But are there programs like that that you have now in place for students, for older students?
For our programming that we have is primarily for the LSAT and the GRE, and those are on individual tutoring basis. And we've tried to do classes for those before. We haven't had the proper focus of our marketing strategy in order for that to come off. So we've primarily been doing individual tutoring.
Well, I don't know if there's a help or not, but there's something called the Black Law Students Association. It is a national organization and it exists in every school that has a law school. And that might be your way in the door, because usually the information we get out of there, and there's also one for Hispanic students, there's one for Indian students, there's one for LGBTQ. There are all those different affinity groups, and they all have a national organization and then a residency in each university where there is the opportunity there. So um, I'm more than happy to connect you with the president of the national chapter of BALSA, and maybe you and he can talk about what you can do. Because when a student comes to visit a law school, most law schools, they come before they're still in high school, or they're still in college. They're still somewhere. They haven't, so they're trying to figure out where to apply, because about early admit, tuition discounting, and all of those things. So BALSA, when Black students indicate that they're going to go to law school, makes a connection to them. It's a national organization that connects them to the BALSA president and the local university. So that might be or something to considering. I do not know the same thing about the MCAT side. I don't have any experience with that, but there is a Black doctor over at Duke called Black doctors in white coats, and he has an amazing program that he does, which is similar to what you do. So
Okay.
students express interest in going to medical school. He kind of shepherds them along, connect them to various Black doctors at Duke, at UNC Central, wherever there's a medical program. So
Mhm.
just something to think about.
Well, I definitely will appreciate that introduction because that's one of the things that make our company APlus Test Prep. We kind of believe a company of the future
Mhm.
because one of our, I guess, bread and butter is that we have the cultural competence to be able to work with all of those affinity groups that you just kind of mentioned.
Mhm.
We've kind of realized in studying other organizations, a lot of times they do not have the cultural competence to go outside of that box that they're very familiar with. And generally, those times are affluent Caucasians or just affluent people. And a lot of times, they're missing a whole big group of people out there that can take advantage of these type of services. So yeah, we're excited. Thank you for that.
Absolutely. want to read a letter to you if I can find it, because most times I cannot find it because I put it somewhere different every time. Just give me 1 second here. See if I can find it in my junk. Ah, there it is. This was sent to me by a law faculty.
Okay.
I want to hear what you think about this. It goes, I am an alum and current faculty member. Coming back to this university as a Black student and a faculty member is a lonely experience. While I was a student, I had my fellow students tell me to my face that I did not deserve to be at this university. They had already decided that the only reason I was at this university was because I was Black. It didn't matter that I had earned my way into this university the same way they did. It didn't matter that I had earned a merit-based scholarship to attend. It didn't matter that I had chose this university over other Ivy League institutions. It only mattered to them that I was Black, and that meant I couldn't have earned my way into this university. The worst part of this is these were not random people. These were people who I thought up until then were my friends. Being Black at this university is demoralizing. It means that every accomplishment you have achieved is worthless. As a Black faculty member at this university, I feel isolated. At the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, they have a Black faculty caucus. Where's that at this university? If it exists, I haven't been able to connect to it. And if it does not exist, why does it not exist? I challenge you to answer these questions and reflect on what it means to be Black faculty on white campuses. As a Black alum, I feel undervalued. Perhaps what they expect from me is to constantly send money every month to the university. Perhaps it stems from my experience as a student, but I don't feel like I'm a part of this university's community. Since graduating from this university, I have lived relatively close to it, but I seldom visit prior to joining the faculty. The only alumni event that I ever participated in was my 10-year reunion, and I only did that for about an hour. I remember the message from the alumni weekend 2 years ago. Welcome back, Black alumni and Black student alliances. I did not feel welcome. I joked with a faculty member of mine from another university that it felt more like an invitation to a lynching than an alumni reception. In retrospect, I realized that this statement may be a bit hyperbolic, but I share it with you to give you a sense of how I feel about returning to my alma mater and to give you a sense of why I have visited so seldom. I remember the image that they used in the announcement. It was a painting entitled "Light is Easy to Love" by Amy Sherald. I think that image sums up my Black experience at this university perfectly. And now as a faculty, I am exactly where I was as a student, isolated and alone.
Mm.
That's hard. She went to the university, merit-based scholarship, faculty member. So my question to you about that letter is all the good work that you and your wife do with your company and all the things that you accomplish, how do you unseat that? How do you untie that to the experience once you get in? So you go to a predominantly white institution, you're brilliant. And I will tell you, as a college advisor at my university, half of the white students that I advise have imposter syndrome, right? Because at their school, they were the smartest person at the school. They end up there and they're just one of a million, right? Or I should say hundreds. And so this woman, obviously a Black woman, a successful Black woman, and she's come back to her university to teach now. So with your work of getting these students scholarships and getting them what they need to go further, how do you address, or how do you suggest it be addressed to get them to be accepted in their universities?
Well, number one, you can't make other people accept you.
I agree with that.
You can't do that. Number two, um, with my own kids, I have 4 kids, and 3 of the 4 went to a predominantly white school. And I just have to tell them, say, number one, guys, you have to, number one, realize that a lot of people there are not going to want you there just because of your skin.
Amen.
Some people just don't want to accept you. That's just the way that they are. It is no different at a college university than it would be anywhere else in this place called America. And like one conversation I had with my daughter, she just went off to NYU, and we were talking, And I was like, look, young lady, please don't do what a lot of black students do when they go to a white college. They end up self-segregating, only have black friends, only go to the black things, only join black organizations. I said, if you were going to do that, you might as well have gone to an HBCU. So if you're going to go to a university like that, go ahead and experience the full university. And I let my daughter know that people are not going to like you for whatever reasons. You're too tall, you're too whatever. Don't worry about them. And this young lady who's working, like, let me go back a step. That's one of the things when we're working with students and families. One of the things that we ask them to do is please look at the racial climate at the school that you're thinking about living in for the next 4 years. After your freshman year, you're going to spend a lot of your time off of the security of that campus. And then even on campus, you never know how people are going to be. And so, I mean, only thing I could say with a young lady or any situation like that is you need to know what you're dealing with. And just because this is 2020, as my dad always shared with me, they can change laws, but laws don't change people's attitudes. And so she should go in there already expecting the worst. And when the good stuff happens, then be surprised.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very good answer. I think the thing that I think is missing from there is a sense of community. So if you go work someplace, and you are the only one that looks like you, or there's something different about you, you end up feeling alienated. You end up feeling like, why am I here? I work in STEM, and I've been doing this for 45, 46 years. And I am still going to meetings where I'm the only person that looks like me. I'm still going to conferences where I'm the only person that looks like me. I am a requested speaker to talk about diversity in STEM. And I find that sometimes offensive because they don't want to pay me to do it, but they want me to talk about this problem, where I don't think it's going to be solved by talking about it. It's going to be solved by taking action, and most companies build their policies on human capital, right? So how much money is this employee going to make for me? How well is this employee going to perform so I can keep my customers? All of these things. And that part of education is missing. Local university, they had a noose on the campus, got up, had a whole bunch of people talk. A few weeks later, had banana bunches hanging on the door of black students, so I think your point is very valid, but
What to deal with, right? And if you don't want to be associated with that, go to an environment where you don't have to deal with it. Go to an HBCU. If she already knew how she was treated as a student, what makes her think these grown people are going to be any different? Maybe she went in being a little bit green or maybe naive about how this world out here works. And people who are in control, the last thing they want to do is give up power. And
amen.
so we all know what to expect. And maybe we want to start thinking about things outside the realm. It's like my dad was sharing with me some things the other day, and it kind of blew me away. He was like, son, black people can't be racist. I said, what? He said, because it's like this. He said, son, white folks do not like us just because of the color of our skin, not anything we've done. We don't like or trust white folks because of things that they have done. And that's a big difference. It's a huge difference.
It really is. It is a big difference. A very good point. Okay, so I want to go back to education a little bit more. Your brother, second brother, and my husband is a third grade teacher. And when he comes home and shares the stories of what the day has been like, it's heartbreaking. It's literally heartbreaking. When you're economically disadvantaged or got trauma in your house, how do you learn? So being A+ and being what you are, when you come to school, you haven't got enough to eat. You haven't had a full meal or whatever. Something has gone completely chaos in your home. How do you learn like that?
Well, this is a hard question. And I guess my philosophy, in my opinion, a lot of people may feel completely different about it. But one thing that I believe is that everything starts and ends at home. Everything. And when value, and that has nothing to do with economics. We've worked with um, some families who really didn't have any resources at all, and they took education extremely seriously. And we've worked with some families that money was no object at all, and the kids were blowing education away. And so it's tough. I believe it all starts at home, and what people make. Say, for an example, my brothers. I mean, I guess being the youngest, I had two great examples. Your husband, he was my first teacher. He taught me everything. Every day I had school with him, every single day. And in our family, Christmas, before the first thing you had to put on your Christmas list was something that was educational. So it just was important.
Mhm.
Uh, I know a lot of families don't make education important because we see that when we go work in all of these schools.
Mhm.
See, my business, we have the fortune of just not regulated to a one region or
Mhm.
one school district.
Mhm.
We've worked here in the Triangle with students from Cary Academy, Ravenscroft, North Raleigh Christian, um, all the way down to schools that are almost all the kids get free lunch. And we see the exact same thing in all the schools, regardless of what their socioeconomic level is. Well, the parents who take education seriously, their kids are learning. And it's one of the things that my wife and I we discussed just about the educational process. I've kind of challenged some teachers that I've worked with, especially Caucasian teachers. I've asked them, Miss Whoever you are, how many books have you ever read in your life written by an African American author? How many? And if they say zero, then I say you're culturally incompetent. I'm like, how many plays have you gone to in your life that was written by a non-white person? And if you say zero, you are culturally incompetent. So how can you teach others? And that's one of the main challenges that you see in schools. Um, we see so many teachers, generally Caucasian teachers, babying the students so much. It's almost like Superwoman's going to come save you if you can't save yourself. And it's so heartbreaking when kids, the only thing they come to classroom with is their cell phone. That's it. No pencil, no paper, and teachers are breaking their necks to give them every little thing that they need every single day. And, you know, I hear a lot of times my wife and I, we talk and people say responsibility politics and this and that. I say anytime you study success and people who are successful, one of the main things that they are is responsible. And you cannot have success without having responsibility. And what most people in the world don't want is responsibility. That is why most people are unsuccessful. And so when you start hearing groups of folks saying, well, African Americans shouldn't be responsible, or let's baby them so much, it's just perpetuating they're not going to be successful. If you study anyone who's, because that's what most people also don't do, is study success. No one ever takes the time, an individual never takes the time out to study other successful people. And once you start doing that, you start realizing that everyone successful people, they almost have the exact same habits. What their widget or what they're doing may be a little bit different, but the way they're approaching is almost always the same thing. What most people do, they study a whole lot of time studying failure, what people haven't done, what they're not doing. Just listen to people's conversations. Most people's conversations are all negative and about the past. Successful people always talk about what's going on in the future. They focus on the future. That's what you can change.
Mhm.
And so some type of way through this education system is not going to change until number one, maybe we start having some type of parenting classes or time if you're on some type of public service, your kids' attendance and maybe their grades or ties into your payout. I'm sharing to my dad all these stories about kids coming to school hungry. What are these kids doing now with these virtual classes and not having the opportunity to come to school to eat? And his face was so blown away. He was like, "What the hell are the parents doing?" So he was mad. He got angry. He said, "That's the parents' responsibility." And maybe that old school parenting is what we need to bring back. And that's another big thing that my wife and I see a huge difference is in with parents of today and parents of yesterday. The kids are the same. Kids are always going to do the least that they can. And whatever their parents are going to let them get away with, that's what they're going to do. That hasn't changed. What has changed is what parents are allowing their kids to do. Oh my God. It's almost like this. My wife and I, we laugh about in education. We say it goes like this. The teachers are afraid of the principals. The principals are afraid of the superintendent. The superintendent is afraid of school board. The school board is afraid of the parents. And the parents are afraid of the kids. And the kids aren't afraid of anyone. And when you go into a school, that is how the majority of the kids are behaving. Parents want their kids to be friends. Listen.
Let me challenge you on this. I'm gonna tell you two stories. So my husband used to teach in Chapel Hill, and there's one boy that was in his class. Was always on time. He walked to school, and I think he walked almost a mile to school. Winter, spring, summer, and fall. And one really, really cold winter, he came to school. He had on a short sleeve white t-shirt, he had on a pair of white pants, and he had on a pair of flip-flops. And I'm trying to remember, but the temperature wasn't over 30 degrees. It was really cold. And so using your logic about what has to start at home, the child's mother was taking in foster kids, and so her foster kids dressed nice, had the best of everything, but her natural child did not. And so when we say it has to start at home, I think the problem has to be that home is a situation where it can exist. Like in where I live at, before this virus hit, we go to all these parents' houses. Our next door neighbor is a GI doctor. Our next door neighbors are air flight nurse. I mean, very, very rich people, at least 2 or 3 kids. And they sit around the dinner table, they sit around and they talk to them just like they're talking to an adult. They don't talk to a baby talk, so like, we are going to go on vacation this month and we're going to need to save $10,000. So you're not going to get any chocolate chip cookies this month, or you're not going to get that. Where when you reverse that by race, we have enough money to make sure that we keep the lights on. We have enough money to make sure that, whatever, and I can tell you from my experience. So I have, between my mother and father, although I'm an only child, I have 15 brothers and sisters. What do they want? They don't know. And these people are old now. They're not young. I think the youngest one might be 40, and they just don't know where to go, just don't know what to do. And so what they had at home wasn't enough for them to get out of their circumstances they're in. What I had at home was exactly the exact same things they had. Very poor, we ate rice most days. My mother worked for people on hands and knees. But my mother had one conversation with me every single day of my life. Get a good education and get the hell out of South Carolina. The exact same conversation every single day. It didn't matter. We say our prayers. Before we say our prayers, she'd say that. So I get when you say it starts at home, but maybe the person at home doesn't have the tools or the skills to motivate their kids to get out and do more, or to motivate their kids to want more than what they've seen every day.
I understand. That's why I said earlier, maybe we need to come up with some type of parenting classes. I guess some major things in life people never have classes for. Two things. You never have a listening class. You have plenty of speech classes. Listening is a skill. People don't ever that. And number two, parenting. It's parenting. I think there need to be some type of parenting classes. Maybe they need to institute that in elementary school. Something about parenting or family classes, or it's just that. And a lot of times it's also going to boil down to some of it may be cultural, but just a person's character, what the parent's character. I mean, one of the things you can't happen is you can't put everything on the teacher. And that's the easiest thing to do is to put everything on the teacher. I mean, teachers are nurses, social workers, gang prevention, all of that stuff. That's too much because parents are not taking their response. I'm not saying all. There's certain situation that goes on, but I think a lot still need to be accountable at home. But I'll say, for an example, you have many parents out there, they'll go to their child's every football practice, they'll go to every game, but they'll choose not to check their kids' homework. They choose not to go to parent-teacher conference. I mean, these are the things that parents know that, and all teachers say, hey, you need to be engaged with me. Because the more a parent is engaged, when there's a benefit of the doubt, the kid's going to get the benefit of the doubt. And so I'm going to keep harping back on. We have to do something around parents, because it's going to be like this. My parents were married and had a child when they were 19 and 21. So people having kids young is absolutely nothing new. That's been going on since the beginning of time. People coming from communities where families are dysfunctional and people on drugs, that's been happening over 100 years. So a lot of these challenges are kind of still the same. So maybe some of these issues in our community, maybe we need to grab ourselves up and fix them ourselves instead of waiting for Superman. Just like the only way these racial issues are going to be challenged is white folks going to have to challenge other white people. It's not going to be black folks making them change. They're going to have to change from within.
And good point. Very good point.
That's going to be tough. Mm-hmm.
So with all of that said, what does the Black Lives Matter movement mean to education and to the affairs of Black people?
Wow. Well, I wish when folks would say Black Lives Matter, that they would take that with all aspects of their life, just not when police mistreat them. If they say Black Lives Matter, then you need to be reading books outside of school. If you say Black Lives Matter, you need to take this free education seriously. If you say Black Lives Matter, you need to read your history books about Black lives. Maybe you will act a little bit better. You know, one of the biggest things that I'm kind of getting out of this, and maybe also this current president has a lot to do with it, but I've never heard my friends and my wife and I, we would do it when we go out to eat, but that was about the only thing. It was that supporting Black-owned businesses.
Yeah.
And I think this is going to be maybe one of the biggest things that come out of this is that the more Black folks start realizing that our ice is pretty damn cold too. And we can start turning our dollar over in our community more, because that's one thing that white folks hear is that cash register. And when their cash register stop ringing, they're going to start realizing everything else is just going to be, as my dad would say, lipstick on a pig, and it doesn't matter. Going back to the point you had said earlier, all this talk, we got to stop. I guarantee you, once we start directing our dollars in the right place, they're not going to have a choice but to listen.
Yeah. But how many, where, how do you know what's a Black business? So if you wanted to go to, well, you can, the obvious, the hairdresser and the barbershop, that's obvious. But like, if you wanted to go, I'd say,
very simple. Google. This is Google. For people who are into it, the same way you would find out about a book you want to read about, the same way you would find out about a restaurant if you're traveling somewhere outside your local area. I mean, people with information now, and people have their cell phone no further than 4 inches from their hand at all times. If you want to do, I have an app on my phone. I don't even know how I found it. They have a list of Black-owned businesses. They have it here in Durham. They have the Greater Durham Black Chamber of Commerce. They keep a list of people who want to do it. Lack of information today in 2020, I will never accept that as an excuse from anyone. A 6-year-old could find out. Real simple. Use the internet.
If you trust the internet. Okay, so let me go back to the Black Lives Matter. So what you said was very poignant, you know, that not only when it's applying to police brutality or some kind of harm, but more the entire scope of what a Black life is, right? So what is it? So I work and spend a great deal of time around white people, and I think the way they see me is differently than they see someone sitting next to me that looks just like me.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked to do that. But I am also an angry Black woman. I am also a violent Black woman. I am also a Black woman who is not confident or capable of doing my job by those same people who endorse and support me, right? Because if I don't say, you know, someone say something in a meeting or something, and I don't say anything, I'm charged for that. Passive aggressive behavior is how it's been called. If I do say something, it's crickets. You know, no one says anything until some man says exactly what I've said, and then it becomes a thing. You know, so like, a woman from American University told me that's called he Pete. You know, it isn't a thing until a man says it. So all the things that are going on in our society within the Black community, finding who you are in your own home and then who you are outside your home. So when you talk about that Black Lives Matter, the whole Black person, you know, how do you expect people to understand how to behave in environments where they're not wanted, not supported, not engaged, not promoted or paid or any of those kinds of things? How do you change that?
I guess I would just say this, and one of the things, I don't even know where I learned this, probably from my father, but if you focus on production, if you go in there and do good work and don't worry about none of the other stuff, I guess one of the things my mom always shared with me, son, 2 things, baby. You can't pick who your siblings gonna be. Pick a bride. Outside of that, that's it with your family. And you cannot pick who your coworkers are unless you're the boss. Then they work for you. They're not your coworkers. But you can determine who you recreate with. And so one of the things I got what she always shared with me, I will always go to work, give my best job, and I didn't give a damn what they thought about me. Because what they thought about me did not impact, at that time I was getting paid every other Friday. And that money hitting the bank was my validation that I'm doing a good job. And I can say it to this day, even after working for multiple banks, I have never been asked to quit, resign, or get fired. I only focus on production. And for people who don't like me, that's their problem. Because I know in my heart, I'm a good ass dude. So I'm not worried about it. I have enough friends, and more importantly, my family love the hell out of me. So I'm not worried about my coworkers. Because for me, when I left work, I left them. And even when I was working at NCCU, I would tell my staff, hey gang, this is the way I operate. Number one, I don't ever want y'all to take one thing from work home. When you leave here, you leave work here. Don't ever do that. Nope. Number two, please, when you leave home, don't bring any of that home stuff to work. When you leave home, you leave home. And let's keep that balance, because when you get to work, I want you to work. I'll bend over backwards for you while we are working. And when you go home, I don't care what you do. That's your home life. I'm never going to come over to your house, and you're never going to come to my house. You're not my friend. You're my coworker, or you work for me. Period.
I agree and I disagree. I have never been fired, laid off, or any of that other stuff like that. You know, I've had skirmishes with my boss, but I can tell you in STEM, the number of women that leave STEM every year is in the 20 to 30% ratio, because you're going in there giving everything you got, and that white guy is sitting right over there beside you. You know, he's going to lunch for an hour. You know, he's got feet up on his table. You know, he's got coffee breaks and cooler breaks and all that stuff, and he still gets paid more than you. So I leave that. I'm gonna leave that one alone. I think your point is correct, but it is not always that
Rochelle,
simple.
I will always say this. A couple of things I learned. Number one, you can't spend anybody else's money, so don't worry about what other people are making. Why? And number two, you don't as my you don't know what that person did to get to that position. It could be above the table, it could be underneath the table. You don't know. But the only thing you can know and can do is control what you can do, which is your job. The serenity prayer. I mean, those are some things that work well with me, and I'm very stress free. Um,
But I think it's because you own your own business, you control your own life, you control all that. And I think what you said you did essential, and your banking places are very good policies. That's not where it works in STEM. It's not. We don't have that luxury. Okay, I've got off at 4 o'clock. I'm gonna go home now. I'm gonna turn my phone off and I'm gonna go enjoy my family. It's like you're on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And if you don't get that one call right, you know, that person calls and said they've been had ransomware or something happened to them, and you can't fix that over the phone. You can't fix. The person got to. Oh, well, I'm not bringing my computer in, and then you're the one that's under the gun to figure out how to get them work, because of course they can't teach. So you got to make that work. But I think you make some very, very valid points, right? But I will say one thing I disagree completely with. If I am in the same job as you're in, we got the same education, the same experience. It ain't no way in the hell you should make more money than me. I don't care if I can't spend your money, but if I'm working as hard as you are and you're gonna make more money than me, I got a problem with that. And I'm gonna tell everybody I can tell about that. That's not fair. That's just
well,
not fair.
I would just say this. Um, my dad gave me some good stuff. Don't change the game, change your position. And when you are in a position to pay people, um, I would come back and like to revisit that conversation.
Okay, I'll leave that alone. Okay,
All right.
so we saw on May 25th, Mr. Floyd being strangled to death by a white police officer with his knee on his neck. A few days later, black man asleep in a drive-through restaurant, dead. 2 black kids from Morehouse and Spelman tased. And seems like every week, we're killing somebody black or brown. We're killing someone black or brown. What is it? And so of the few police officers I've interviewed thus far, what do you think is the thing that makes that stop happening? Like that black people are not so vulnerable. And I can't tell you how many people have told me the fear they have when they see those blue lights in the back of their window, or when they see their kids wandering around the neighborhood, especially if it's a mixed neighborhood, you know, that it does. So what do you think fixes that?
Training, training,
Training who? The police?
training. Yes, I believe police officers, that should be more of a professional career. Maybe you need to have some type of college degree, because you're dealing with split second decisions. It's training. You have to go to train, or someone have to go to training longer to do your hair or to cut my bald head than it is to be a police officer. I have one of my best friends who's an attorney. He had to go to college for 4 years, law school for 3 years to defend the law. You can get out of the police academy in how long? And you out here writing tickets for the law? It has to do with training. Next, along with the training, They need to put these police officers in more diverse situations, or have make them live in the community where they are policing. Could be some very simple things I think will work out, but the training I think is the main thing.
Oh, thank you. We have 5 minutes. I'm giving it all to you, whatever you want to end. Share whatever you want to share.
Well, one, I would like to thank you for doing this. I really watched you grow throughout this and seeing how this thing has really grown. So thank you for giving people the opportunity to talk about maybe this uncomfortable topic. And I would just like to share to all the families and talk a little bit about my business. During this time of the pandemic, and everyone's kind of in an uncomfortable situation with this online or virtual learning. As one of my mentors shared with me, attitude is everything. If mom and dad, if you at home having a negative attitude about how this online learning is going, is how different than it really is from school, you know, you're not putting your baby in a good learning environment or mindset. So maybe you start thinking a little bit more positive about it, because everybody's in the same situation. And then parents might want to start thinking forward a little bit. Being as a business owner, and I'm not the only one who's thinking how their businesses are going to change because of this COVID-19 and people working from home. So a lot of these high school students right now, they probably spend their whole career working from home. So you might want to, so parents, please don't think that the way you came up and the way that you made it and made your success, if you're teaching your child to do the same thing, you're making a 20th century earner, and that's not going to be productive. And so anytime you get lemons, let's make some of the best lemonade that you can and have a good attitude, because everybody's going through the same thing. And so get good at it. Next, I'll also say once again, parents, with these online classes, please make sure you're putting your kids in a good environment. I mean, I know we've been working on online classes with different school districts and schools, and we've seen kids got their bonnet on, laying in the bed, watching the show, so we know they're not taking any notes. So parents, you may want to monitor what your son or daughter is doing when they're supposed to be on their online classes. Highly encourage maybe your child to keep their video on to make sure they're being accountable. With their video off, the teacher can't see what they're doing. And if the kid is not engaged, the teacher cannot be more engaged than the student. The teacher has the information. The students need to get the information. And lastly, I'm going to say to parents, hey parents, I'm going to challenge all of you all. Put this thing right here down and start picking up some books yourself. Kids do more of what they see their parents doing instead of what they hear their parents saying. So the more you read, the more your child's going to read. Parents, I would challenge you, hey, have your son or daughter pick out a book, make a book club for you. So when you're sitting down at the dinner table like we do at our house, or did when our kids was here, you can have conversations about it. You know, I think one of the benefits of this lockdown when we were on it is that families had to spend time together. Families probably hadn't spent that much time together in years. It's a beautiful thing, because once you boil down to it, family is all that we have. So parents, if you're out there, if you want to get some more information about what we do at APlus Test Prep, please visit us at scoresopendoors.org. That's scoresopendoors.org, because we realize that higher scores open doors, and where do you and your family want to go? Thank you, Dr. Rowe, for having me here today. Continue to do the great work that you're doing in this space of diversity, and look forward for bigger and better things coming from you. So thank you so very much, and God bless you and your family.
Thank you. Same to you, dear. Bye.
Thank you.